All right, Wolfman 2025 is here. The embargo has finally lifted, so let's talk about it. This is going to be a spoiler-free review. Mind you, there's going to be one section of this video where I do delve into the makeup design of the Wolfman himself. So I'll give you a timestamp that you can skip to if you don't want to hear that particular section. So a night ago, or a night and a bit ago, we had the premiere here in Sydney. We had Leigh Whannell in attendance. I was hyped for this film, despite the fact that the first trailer didn't sell me. So much so, I just avoided every other trailer, TV spot since, and I was glad because upon watching the new trailers, new TV spots now, there are things that it gave away in terms of jump scares and stuff like that. So I'm glad I saved myself for them because it was much more effective up on screen. So we got to see this in IMAX here in Sydney, and I can highly recommend seeing this in IMAX, especially when it comes to the sound design. But we'll get to that in a bit. So when it comes to Leigh Whannell as a writer, director, I really love what he did with The Invisible Man. It was a pleasant little surprise. I love the commentary on being in an abusive relationship and the fact that it's a lens suit from a tech mogul. I like that spin on it instead of having a dude in bandages, sunglasses, and a fedora and essentially recycling that. It stays in the realm of The Invisible Man, but it does something modern and it does something different. Now, Leigh Whannell was the sole writer of The Invisible Man. This time around, he is a co-writer. So this time around, he's joined by Corbett Tuck in the writing department. Now, this definitely is a bit of a spin on the world of the Wolfman. It isn't exactly, your cookie cutter thing of a guy being bitten by a wolf and then he's howling on a full moon. Now, my first overall thoughts, while this isn't on par with The Invisible Man, I had a lot of fun with this nonetheless. It is by no means a perfect movie. I think its biggest downfalls are its writing, some of the dialogue choices for the characters, and also the runtime and the pacing of this film. This film clocks in at about an hour, 42 minutes, including credits. I definitely could have used another 15-20 minutes padded onto that just to put a bit more meat on the bone in certain scenes, specifically the climax of the film. But anyway, we're going into the climax of the film. Let's start at the very beginning. So we've got the character of Blake played by Christopher Abbott. Now, whilst he's heading to his father's abandoned farmhouse with his wife Charlotte and daughter Ginger, they're attacked by an unseen animal and, in a desperate escape, barricade themselves in said farmhouse. As the creature prowls the perimeter and the night stretches on, Blake begins to behave strangely, transforming into something unrecognizable that soon jeopardizes his wife and daughter's safety. So this all takes place in one night, and I really like that idea. I love that it just doesn't cut to the next day and you see how this is affecting Blake and what his body is going through. I love that it stays true to the time of the night. It goes from midnight to 2 a.m. when there's little pockets of time, and it stays pretty good with the continuity and it flows nicely, even though I would like to see a bit more with the climax of the film. And like I said, my first thoughts on the film, and some of you may have seen in the out of theater reaction that I did, it's a decent attempt at having almost a new spin on the Wolfman, and it's by no means perfect. I still have fun with it. A lot of my issues come from the writing and the characters and their choices. So some of the dialogue, I don't know if it was a Leigh Whannell thing or it was his writing partner, but some of the dialogue just came off as very surface level. And I know there's a time and a place for surface level dialogue, but in the moments where Blake has transformed into the Wolfman, and it's heartbreaking because he has a wife, he has a daughter. The reactions from, say, the wife just were very lackluster. And the chemistry between Christopher Abbott and Julie Gardner, I did not buy it at all. But also it's one of those things where they're written as a married couple that are having problems and they're no longer happy in their marriage. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. They definitely seem like the odd couple. They seem like the last people you would see together in a relationship, let alone married and with a daughter. But I think when push comes to shove near the climax of the film, I just felt there could have been a bit more pathos from Julie Gardner's character towards her husband, who's clearly suffering and going through something severely traumatic. I think the standout is actually Matilda Firth. Little Matilda Firth, who plays Ginger, their daughter. She's a young British actress and she does an incredible job. Like, she goes through the absolute ringer. Look, the whole family does, but considering that she is such a young actress, I think she did great. Now, let's talk about the transformation and the makeup design of the Wolfman. So this is going to delve into a bit of spoiler territory in terms of the aesthetic of the Wolfman. So if you want to skip to this timestamp, please do. If you don't want to know anything, go for it. When it came to the transformation, it's very slow and it's in stages. That was my favorite points of the film. I love the concepts of the transformation. You see it from the perspective of Blake, you see it from the perspective of his wife and daughter and what they can hear, what he can hear, and what they cannot hear. And it also plays with your senses. There are times where Blake will be talking normally, and now and then you'll hear a growl or as if he can't speak. And it plays with your senses, and you think, am I going deaf? And then I turned to my mate who I was with in the cinema, and he's like, did he just growl? I'm like, yeah, it was a growl. Little bits and pieces like that, and also what you see through Blake's eyes, how his senses are reacting, because his body's going through a very big change. I love stuff like that. When it got to the final point of the transformation, final form Blake as the Wolfman, the makeup design just didn't do it for me. And that is not to take away from the hard work that goes into processes like this with molding, casting, silicone work, hair punching, all that. The application looked beautiful, just the design didn't exactly sell me. Now, really going into a bit of spoilerish stuff, some of you may have seen that performer at a Universal Horror Nights, and they had like a preview of the Wolfman or a version of the Wolfman. It's pretty similar to what you see at certain points in the film. That's why it didn't really sell me. I feel like it's one of those things where it's more man than wolf. But then Leigh Whannell has also gone on to say that the idea was it's the human body and something that's wolf-like clashing together. So the anatomy isn't going to be perfectly like a wolf. Certain things are going to pop out and it's going to be asymmetrical, which I appreciate and understand, but to me the scare factor just wasn't really there by final form Blake as the Wolfman. Also, this film draws a lot of inspiration from The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, which I really appreciate because that is a tragic film, especially towards the end. Like, that one hit me in the feels. And yes, I finally saw it. I think another big draw card with this film is the suspense and the scares. This film relies a lot on sound. Sound tells a big part of this story, much like how Mad Max Fury Road, where the visuals tell the story. A lot of time you have complete silence and you can just hear little creaks, leather crinkling together, footsteps, heavy footsteps. As Blake goes through the transformation, his footsteps get heavier and heavier in the sound design. Now, when it comes to the third act and the climax, I felt like there could have been a bit more meat on the bone. Pun intended. I just feel like it was wrapped up too quickly considering how far we'd come in the first and second act, building up this family that is clearly breaking down, let alone the father who is physically breaking down as well and becoming something else and is no longer being a husband and a father. It seemed abrupt, but that can also be an analogy for sometimes we're just not prepared for things in life and they happen very abruptly. But I just felt like there could have been a bit more padding in the climax of the film. So guys, overall, I didn't enjoy this as much as Leigh Whannell's previous outing, The Invisible Man. Look, there's some good suspenseful fun to be had with this one. To me, it suffers with the underwritten characters and a concept design that is a little lackluster, but the in-between and the concepts of the transformation and what Blake goes through and what takes place in those moments were brilliant. The scares and suspenseful moments are handled well and paired with some incredible sound design, even if it's just relying on silence at times. That kind of white noise where you're expecting something to jump out and then it doesn't, but it keeps you tensed and ready for a scare. And within the transformation, we get some beautiful, practical body horror effects, like not just with Blake's transformation, but there are other victims that fall prey to certain things going on in the film, and it was great to see it practical in camera. You can tell there's barely any CGI with the transformation, little bits and pieces here and there, I guess, to clean up certain effects, but for the most part you can tell that's like a silicone torso with bones popping, protruding, and like a brand new jaw that's coming into like form, and he's got to like crack it in place. Again, paired with some great sound design. So in the end, a pretty decent attempt with a new spin on the world of the Wolfman. Not as strong as The Invisible Man, nonetheless, had a pretty good time with this one, and hopefully you guys too. With that, I'm going to be giving Leigh Whannell's Wolfman 3.5 Flanders werewolves out of 5. Flanders werewolves? Flanders Wolfman. Flanders Wolfman. There you go. So guys, once you have seen Wolfman, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts, especially in comparison to The Invisible Man, which again was a massive treat, a massive surprise, and yeah, I loved everything about it. This one still has fun to be had. My issues just definitely lie within how the characters are written. I don't know if that's a Leigh Whannell thing or a writing partner thing. Who knows? Love you guts, and I'll catch you in the next one.